スト翻訳始まるよ。皆さんこんにちは、花です。今日はメダリストエピソード6を見ています。前回のエピソードでいのりちゃんは1位になりました。私はとても嬉しかったです。2週間前の質問は、私の一番好きなフィギュアスケーターは誰だと思いますか？答えは、アシュリー・ワーグナーさんです。9年前、私はアシュリー・ワーグナーさんに何回か会うことができました。アシュリーさんはいつも私にとても優しくしてくれました。では、今週の質問はコメントにあります。また、来週の週末、私は短い旅行に行くので、エピソード7は月曜日に投稿されます。見てくれてありがとうございます。グッドボタンとチャンネル登録よろしくお願いします。Now, I did get asked some interesting questions after last episode, and I do realize that sometimes I feel like I'm explaining things really, really deep, but there are some things that since I've been skating for 20 years, I'll brush off, not realizing that some people who are watching these videos have no idea what I'm talking about. So if at any time you have questions regarding what I'm talking about, feel free to leave it in the comments. I will answer some of them at the beginning of my videos. Now, in this case, the question that I got was talking about ice dance versus figure skating, ice dance coaching versus figure skating coaching, and I also brought up in last episode the difference between a coach and a choreographer. Well, I mentioned that there was a difference, but I didn't actually talk about it, so I'm going to explain the difference now. In figure skating, there are 4 disciplines. You have men's singles, women's singles, pairs, and ice dance. All of these are considered figure skating. However, ice dance is kind of the odd man out, and that is because ice dance is the only discipline that does not have jumps and has very few spins. Now, if you've caught this before, Tsukasa did mention that he was a competitive ice dancer when he was competing, which means he did not do any jumps when he was competing with his partner. They just did a series of steps and turns and edge work and that sort of thing. Now, the difference in coaching is that many times an ice dance person, so someone who grew up ice dancing, is not going to be very good at coaching what we call freestyle, which is going to be the jumps and the spins. And usually a freestyle coach is not going to be that good at teaching ice dance. However, there are definitely exceptions to this, like in Tsukasa's case, and even my own coaches who usually dabble in both. But ice dance, by default, is very different from the others. A lot of people will try and argue that ice dance is actually not that difficult compared to freestyle skating because you are not jumping. However, that's not necessarily the case. It is difficult in a very different way than freestyle skating. I actually competed in solo dance for a year where I did ice dance, but I did not have a partner, and that was one of the most challenging years of my skating career because all I had to do was make one little slip up in the middle of a footwork sequence, and I lost so many points. On top of that, in partnered ice dance, if you mess up one step, you might also mess up your partner and get completely off and then possibly invalidate your entire step sequence. That could be worth 15 points. It is much more meticulous, and while there is less obvious errors made when you are watching ice dance, you are expected to be perfect every single time, and if you're not, you will not win. In freestyle skating, at least, if you have enough difficult jumps, if you fall on one, you can still easily win. So that's kind of the difference. Ice dance, again, is the outlier just because it is still figure skating, but it is judged very differently than freestyle skating. The last thing I want to talk about is the difference between a coach and a choreographer. Now, I mentioned this a little bit when we were talking about Hikaru in the last episode because I couldn't tell if her main coach was her main coach and she had a choreographer or something like that. So in high-level competitions and with high-level skaters, you'll see skaters that have an entire coaching team. You'll have your main coach who coaches everything. You'll have your jump technician, your spin technician, your off-ice technician, and you'll have a choreographer. Now, a choreographer is not really a coach. A choreographer is tasked with creating your programs once a season. And depending on the relationship you have with this choreographer, you might work with them throughout the year to continue to make changes to the program, make it a little bit better. But oftentimes you only work with that choreographer for a temporary time until your programs are created, and then you move on to the next thing. A coach, on the other hand, is someone that you're going to be working with throughout the year, all the time, and they are going to be developing your technique. In younger levels, generally speaking, the coach will do everything. They will do the choreography and they will coach everything because it can get very pricey when you start adding a lot of different specialists. But in high levels, you're going to see skaters that have a specialized choreographer who does just choreography. That person does not teach them technique, they just create their programs. And this is very, very common in high-level competitions because normally, once you get into high levels, you have to have a coaching team because everyone has different specializations. So yes, some skaters will spend hundreds upon hundreds of dollars on coaching every single day. I hope this answered your question a little bit better so you understand the difference between the disciplines and the difference between a coach and a choreographer. Throughout today's episode, if I bring anything up that you don't fully understand and you have questions about it, feel free to leave it in the comments below. She's definitely talented if she's on the news. Oh, we know Tsukasa? Who are you and how do you know him? I get excited every Saturday. I'm all excited now. They're both too humble. Oh, she still hasn't taken the test, actually. I wonder what's in the test. When you test here in the States, it's actually, what you have to do in the test is way lower than what's competitive at that level. That's a good mindset to have. You can't get too absorbed in winning because then every time, you're not going to win every time. So you have to be okay with not winning every time. Sometimes winning the first one can cause actually some issues. That happened to me. Kyoto. Is level 1 higher than prelim? You gotta balance out being proud of yourself, but knowing that you have a lot more work to do. But you have the right people in your corner. Yeah. Oh, she doesn't know that, does she? Sounds like they just have very similar... The people they even are looking up to are like wearing similar costumes and have the same color eyes, the parallels. Yeah. So he didn't really actually start until high school. Oh, okay. Yep, that does happen. So when it comes to starting as late as high school, I didn't realize that he really didn't get to start until high school. It is very true. You're going to have a lot of people in the figure skating world pretty much tell you it's too late. Like, you're not going to get anywhere because, again, I've mentioned it over and over again because this is such a theme in the show. This sport is considered to be one of those like very early development sports where if you don't start between ages 3 and 6, a lot of coaches will just automatically write you off for being competitive and either suggest just being recreational or trying the adult circuit immediately, which there is a competitive adult circuit here in America. I don't know if it's as prevalent in Japan, and it is very common for people who start very late to just go into that without ever trying the regular levels because it's just to a point. Yes, you won't ever probably be able to get as high level as a senior level competitor and go to international events, but it's still just such a mindset ingrained in everyone in the figure skating world that immediately you see someone above the age of like 10 come to you and say they want to start skating. These are the kind of things that you're going to hear is you're too old, you can do it recreationally, or we can get you into an adult circuit. Those are your choices. There's nothing else to choose from. It's a very solo sport, but it's not that solo. Wow. Wow. That does not happen very often. A lot of people quit when they graduate high school. So they are ice dancing, like I mentioned. If you get good enough, you can get sponsorship. She always have a dead phone. All it takes sometimes is just to have one person believing in you. Kind of like how Tsukasa is the one who's believing in Inori. So close. I had a feeling that was gonna happen. Wow. He's a natural coach for sure. You're allowed to celebrate. You just can't let it make you cocky or anything. It's so wholesome. I love it. Oh. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about Tsukasa's backstory. So I really, really like how they depicted his only choice being ice dance, because while I didn't mention it the last time, that can be an option. So ice dance is very complicated. Ice dance is very hard. However, there is a level of if you're too old or you can't naturally jump or anything like that, there is an option of going to ice dance. Now, it can be incredibly difficult to find a partner. However, that's usually difficult for the girls. There's usually, when you're looking for a partner in ice dance, a ratio here in America, I want to say of like 20 girls to 1 guy. So it can be incredibly difficult to find a partner, which is why I did solo dance. However, I did solo dance when I was 22. I think I was 22, and I still had never landed a double axel or a triple. And I knew at that point it was just too late for me. My body was never going to allow me to figure out how to do a triple. It wasn't going to be something that I could learn to jump higher or jump tighter. It just wasn't going to happen. So I decided to go with the route of ice dance, which is easier on your joints, first of all, because yes, that is a thing. The older you get, the harder it is to jump because of how hard it is on your joints. And while it takes a lot of time to become good at ice dance, that is something that, generally speaking, is catering to older skaters. In fact, our current world champions, Madison Chalk and Evan Bates, are both in their 30s. And I believe all the teams that are like the top 3, which would be Chalk and Bates from the United States, Guinard and Fabry from Italy, and Piper Gill and Paul Poirier from Canada, I believe all of them are in their 30s. So I like that we're depicting in that way, because I think it's very possible that adult figure skating is just not that prevalent in Japan like it is in America. And also there still is that desire to want to compete at a super high level, which you just can't do if you're an adult. Like, you're not going to be able to compete at the big nationals with the crowds and the arenas on TV. This is something that is severely lacking in Western media about figure skating, because tell me why every single movie that I have seen where someone has to stop regular freestyle skating, like singles women or singles men, because of age or injury, they go into pairs, which is arguably even harder on your joints than singles, because now you still have to jump, but you also have to do throws where you have to be thrown into the air. Sometimes the woman is like, I don't even know, like 7 feet in the air and still land on 1 foot. Super freaking hard on your joints, at least for women. And they don't go with ice dance. I think it just goes to show that Western media, they don't do the research. So it's really refreshing to see them actually go a route of, hey, they tried ice dance because they were at the point where they just couldn't keep going with what they were trying. So really liked that. I also forgot to mention that you have to reach a certain level to get sponsorships, so it can be tough because you have to show a lot of talent and ability early on in order to get high level enough to get sponsors. I'm wondering if he's gonna offer to sponsor Inori, though. I have a feeling he's not charging Inori much or anything at all. Mood. You're not full. Your stomach just grumbled. It's realistic. Because again, figure skating is very expensive. Wow. Mood. Ooh, that looks tasty. Mmm. Now I'm hungry. They don't eat the rice? That's funny. I love rice. I wonder, like, I've been wondering if he's charging Inori anything or just barely charging anything. So he still had unfinished business. Feel that. I was in so much debt when I was skating. I think you might have some unfinished business, though. Asking the deep questions, though. You want to cheer for the people who are just willing to put the work in no matter what. Blades are very expensive, and by the way, at a high level, you have to buy your boot and your blades separately. It's awful. Still got me crying every episode, what the heck? Wow. That's a lot of worms. That's cute. They're two peas in a pod. It's so cute. I love it. Should be a little more careful. Just a little bit more. Alright, that was Medalist episode 6. I really like how this episode focused on Tsukasa. I feel like he's a character that I've found very interesting, and it's so funny. I know I've talked a little bit about on this channel, and on these videos in general, my favorite anime character is Tanjiro, and one of the reasons why I love Tanjiro so much is how persistent he is at working hard, even in the face of such sadness and heartbreak and pain, and when everything's kind of going against him, he still chooses to persevere. And of course, in Tanjiro's case, it's a little bit more extreme because he's facing certain death every single episode. Tsukasa, however, is so much more relatable in that sense because figure skating is extremely expensive. I don't need to say it again. Everyone knows that. I've mentioned it multiple times. And I went into over $1,000 into debt just to try and continue to compete because I had to work only part-time. I couldn't work full-time, otherwise I wouldn't have the time to skate. And in order to be able to compete and have the amount of lessons that I needed to, I just had to keep telling my coaches, like, I owe you, and it got to the point where with my lessons and the travel expenses and the competition expenses, I was looking at over $1,000 of debt just out of that. But I was still working and I wasn't spending money on anything else. I lived with my parents. I didn't have that many bills. And yet that's just where my life was because of how expensive it was. So to see Tsukasa be the character that is so hardworking, is inspiring the people around him because of his hard work, and have it be in a relatable way of figure skating. Oh boy, Tsukasa is gonna be... Listen, no one's knocking Tanjiro off of his first place pedestal for quite a while. I've had plenty of time with Tanjiro to just love him and adore him, but Tsukasa is getting close. I saw someone comment that, like, my Tanjiro figures were gonna start to be replaced by, like, Tsukasa and Inori, and, I mean, let me get something very straight. When I go to Japan in a couple months, I will definitely be searching out some Medalist merch for sure. I have not been able to find anything here yet. It is not that popular here in this country yet, but I'm hoping I'll find some stuff in Japan. Fingers crossed. But I'm really glad this episode kind of dove into his character because I think Tsukasa is absolutely my favorite character in the show so far. Although I do love Inori, I think because Tsukasa is also an adult now and he's kind of looking at his career from his perspective of it's over now, which is kind of how I feel right now. Although I do still feel like I have unfinished business, so I might compete at some point again in my life, but I don't know if that's gonna happen just because of how life goes. I'm really, really happy to see some development with him. Didn't expect, again, to cry over his backstory or for someone to die, but I kind of saw that coming. It was clear that she had some kind of illness. I'm really looking forward to see what happens next. It seems as if we're going to test and then compete again in Kyoto. I think, personally, it would be good for Inori to not win first place at her next competition because in skating, you can't always win. I actually won. I was very talented when I started, and I actually won. I think it was like 6 competitions in a row that I competed in, and I did that for an entire year straight, and then I moved to a different state, and the next competition I did after I moved to a different state, I got last place, and that was hard on I think I was still 7 at this time, and I just cried and cried and cried. I was very much not prepared for the feelings of coming in last place. At all. Which is okay. I was 7, okay? Like, kids are allowed to feel those kinds of emotions, but I think that coming in first place just over and over and over again did not prepare me for the rest of my skating career where you have your ups, you have your downs. You're gonna come in first place, you're gonna come in last place. It's going to happen, and you can't go into every competition with the mindset of first place, first place, first place, because sometimes it's just not gonna happen.
それでは、今日出てきた英単語を振り返ってみましょう。
Series of
この表現は何々の連続や一連の何々を意味し、同じ種類の出来事や行動が繰り返し発生することを表します。事件や出来事、プロセス、試みなどを説明するときによく使われます。こちらがその英単語を使った例文です。
The company faced a series of challenges last year.
その会社は昨年、一連の課題に直面しました。
She went through a series of interviews before getting the job.
彼女はその仕事を得る前に一連の面接を受けた。アイスダンスの場合はジャンプなどはなく、連続したステップやターンがあるということだそうですね。そんなこと全然知らなかったです。フィギュアスケートは奥が深いですね。
Exception
この単語は例外や特別なケースを意味し、通常のルールや基準に当てはまらない事柄を指します。例外なくという意味で、without exception というフレーズもよく使われます。こちらがその英単語を使った例文です。
There's usually a strict dress code, but today is an exception.
通常は厳格な服装規定があるが、今日は例外だ。
Everyone must follow the rules, no exceptions.
全員がルールを守らなければならない。例外はない。アイスダンスの人がフリースタイルのことを教えるのは難しいらしいですが、例外もあるにはあるみたいですね。 私も実力をつけてライツは例外だと言われるような存在になりたいです。
Dabble in.
この表現は趣味程度に手を出すまたはちょっと試してみるという意味で、ある活動に深く関わるのではなく、軽く経験することを指します。特に芸術、スポーツ、ビジネスなどの分野で使われます。こちらがその英単語を使った例文です。
He dabbles in painting, but he's not a professional artist.
彼は趣味で絵を描いているが、プロのアーティストではない。
She has been dabbling in cryptocurrency trading recently.
彼女は最近仮想通貨の取引にちょっと手を出している。アイスダンスもフリースタイルもどっちもやったことがある人は例外的にアイスダンス出身でもフリースタイルを教えられるらしいですね。なんだか野球の大谷選手みたいですよね。
Meticulous.
この単語は細部まで注意を払うまたは几帳面なという意味で、物事を慎重に行い、細かい部分まで完璧に仕上げようとする性格や態度を表します。特にデザインや計画、分析などの分野でよく使われます。こちらがその英単語を使った例文です。
He is meticulous about his work, checking every detail carefully.
彼は仕事に対して几帳面で、細かい部分まで注意深くチェックする。
Her meticulous planning made the event a huge success.
彼女の綿密な計画がそのイベントを大成功に導いた。アイスダンスは一つのミスが大量の失点につながる、とてつもなく細かいところまで気を配らなければいけない競技らしいですね。またまた、新たに知ったことが増えました。
Temporary.
この単語は一時的なまたは仮のことを意味し、長く続かない状態や短期間のものを指します。仕事や住居、契約などの文脈でよく使われます。こちらがその英単語を使った例文です。
This job is only temporary, but I hope to get a permanent position.
この仕事は一時的なものだが、正社員のポジションを得たいと思っている。
The company hired temporary workers for the busy season.
その会社は繁忙期のために一時的な労働者を雇った。フィギュアスケートの振付師は大抵の場合選手と一緒に仕事をしたとして一時的なものなんだそうですね。なんというか、その方が専門の職人さんって感じでかっこいいかもしれません。
Recreational.
この単語は娯楽のまたは気晴らしのといった意味を持ち、楽しみやリラックスのために行う活動を指します。スポーツ、アウトドア、趣味など、仕事や勉強とは関係なく楽しむためのものに対して使われます。こちらがその英単語を使った例文です。
The park offers many recreational activities, such as hiking and fishing.
その公園ではハイキングや釣りなどの娯楽活動が楽しめます。
He plays basketball for recreational purposes, not professionally.
彼はプロではなく気晴らしのためにバスケットボールをしている。1歳以上の年齢になってからフィギュアスケートを始めようとしても、趣味でやり始めることを大抵の場合は勧められるみたいですね。まあ、辛いでしょうけど、それだけ厳しい世界なんでしょう。
Full.
この単語は満腹のお腹いっぱいのという意味で、食事の後に使われることが多いです。また、単にいっぱいの満たされたという意味でも使われます。こちらがその英単語を使った例文です。
I can't eat another bite. I'm completely full.
もう一口も食べられないよ。お腹がいっぱいだ。
After that huge meal, I felt so full and sleepy.
あの大きな食事の後、お腹がいっぱいで眠くなった。司先生は本当はお腹が減っていたのに、お腹がいっぱいなんだと強がっていましたね。司先生が涙を流しながらお寿司を食べるシーンはグッときました。人の善意は素直に受け取りましょう。
Charge.
この単語は、料金を請求する代金を課すという意味を持ち、特にお店やサービスを利用する際に使われます。また、クレジットカードでの支払いにも関連します。こちらがその英単語を使った例文です。
The restaurant charged me $10 for a bottle of water.
そのレストランは私に水のボトル1本で$10を請求した。
Can I charge this purchase to my credit card?
この購入の代金をクレジットカードで支払えますか？司先生は貧しい生活を送っていますが、ひょっとしたらりのりちゃんからの授業料をあまり取っていないのかもしれません。というか、司先生の取り分が少ないだけなのかもしれませんね。かわいそうに。
In debt.
この表現は借金をしているまたは負債があるという意味で、お金を借りて返済が必要な状態を指します。経済的な問題について話す際によく使われます。こちらがその英単語を使った例文です。
After buying a new car, I'm now in debt.
新しい車を買ったので、今は借金をしている。
He is deeply in debt and struggling to pay it off.
彼は多額の借金を抱えていて、それを返済するのに苦労している。フィギュアスケートはすごくお金がかかるので、借金をしてやっている人もいるんでしょうね。お金がかかるかどうかは、競技人口の増減にも関わるので、なんとかしないといけない問題ですよね。